This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
In the months following Donald Trump's re-election in 2024, Elon Musk's net worth soared to an unprecedented $400 billion, making him the first person to cross that milestone. This came right after he poured over $250 million into efforts to secure Trump's return to the White House, a massive contribution that cements Musk as one of the largest individual backers of a presidential race in U.S. history. His outsized role in shaping the election raises a chilling question. Are we witnessing the roots of an oligarchy taking hold in the United States? An oligarchy is a system of governance where power resides in the hands of a small, wealthy elite. While oligarchies are often associated with authoritarian regimes, they can also exist within nominally democratic systems where economic inequality translates into disproportionate political influence. Many thinkers have argued that no matter the system, democracy, monarchy, dictatorship, or otherwise, real power inevitably ends up concentrated in the hands of a few. This idea is explained by something called the iron law of oligarchy, a theory proposed by sociologist Robert Michaels. He argued that within any democratic organization, like political parties, unions, or even governments, power tends to end up in the hands of a few people. This happens because large groups require centralized decision-making to function efficiently. Over time, these leaders accumulate more authority, making it increasingly difficult for ordinary members to challenge their influence. As a result, even systems designed to be inclusive and representative often evolve into structures where decision-making is dominated by a select few.
But guess what? Oligarchy is a global phenomenon, and it is headquartered right here in the United States. The fact of the matter is, and we don't talk about it very much, but this is the reality, a small number of incredibly wealthy billionaires own and control much of the global economy, period. End of discussion.
A 2014 study analyzed nearly 1,800 U.S. policies from 1981 to 2002, concluding that the U.S. government tends to prioritize the interests of the wealthy and powerful over those of the general public. Their research found that government policies often favor special interests and lobbying groups. And when the preferences of the majority of citizens clash with those of economic elites, the elites typically prevail. While the researchers stopped short of labeling the United States an outright oligarchy, they supported the concept of a civil oligarchy. Unlike traditional oligarchies, a civil oligarchy works subtly within democratic systems, meaning that formal democratic institutions like elections, free speech, and political representation exist, but the actual power lies disproportionately with the wealthiest citizens, especially in areas of government policies that protect their wealth and income.
My friends, what we are looking at here has nothing to do with democracy. What we are looking at here is oligarchy. This is up and up. Government by the billionaire class for the billionaire class.
In the 2024 presidential election, Donald Trump's victory was significantly bolstered by substantial financial contributions from prominent billionaires. The most prominent backer, of course, was Elon Musk, whose involvement extended beyond financial support. He actively campaigned for Trump, making appearances at rallies and utilizing his social media platform to influence public opinion. Following the election, Musk will lead the newly proposed Department of Government Efficiency, a role that positions Musk to significantly impact federal regulations and policies. This pattern of substantial donations, followed by potential favors or appointments, might not be isolated. Reports speculate that other wealthy donors could leverage their financial support to gain influential positions or push for policies that align with their personal or business interests. Could this signal a broader trend where political power becomes increasingly intertwined with wealth, effectively sidelining the average voter? As billionaires take on key roles in government or influence policy decisions, questions arise about the balance of power in a democracy. But an even bigger question is, how did we get here? The 2010 Supreme Court decision in Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission marked a turning point in U.S. campaign finance laws, enabling unlimited spending by corporations and individuals in elections. The case began when Citizens United, a conservative nonprofit, wanted to air a documentary critical of Hillary Clinton during the 2008 Democratic primary. Federal law at the time prohibited corporations and unions from funding electioneering communications close to elections, sparking a legal battle. In a narrow 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court sided with Citizens United, declaring that such restrictions violated the First Amendment's protection of free speech. This decision fundamentally reshaped the political landscape by allowing these groups to spend unlimited amounts of money to influence elections, provided they did not coordinate directly with candidates or campaigns. This opened the door for the rise of super PACs, dramatically increasing the role of wealth in shaping electoral outcomes.
A super PAC is a legal vehicle for people or businesses or both to pool their wealth to spend on electoral politics.
And the super PAC really opens the door for more billionaires to be able to pour money in to influence the elections.
Whereas traditional PACs or political action committees are limited in how much they can contribute directly to a candidate's campaign, super PACs or independent expenditure-only committees can raise and spend unlimited amounts of money from individuals, corporations, and unions to advocate for or against political candidates, provided they do not coordinate directly with campaigns. The rise of super PACs has led to unprecedented spending in elections. For instance,
in the 2022 cycle, super PACs and other outside groups spent almost $2.3 billion on federal races. That's a quarter of all money spent during that election.
Super PACs often fund extensive advertising campaigns, including TV, digital, and social media ads, which can shape public opinion and voter behavior.
If it feels like political ads are everywhere during an election cycle, you are not alone.
Negative attack ads have become a hallmark of their strategies, often swaying undecided voters or deepening partisan divides. Unlike traditional PACs that are restricted in how they raise money, typically collecting smaller contributions from many donors, super PACs rely on large donations from wealthy individuals and entities. The dominance of wealthy donors in super PAC funding has raised concerns about the outsized influence of a small elite group over the political process. Critics argue that the dominance of large-scale contributions undermines the principle of one person, one vote, effectively granting greater political influence to those with more money. Since the 1980s, successive administrations, particularly during the Reagan, Bush, and Trump eras, have championed tax policies that were initially framed as drivers of economic growth. These measures, however, have largely failed to deliver broad-based benefits, instead disproportionately favoring the wealthy and leaving middle and working-class Americans behind.
Now let me explain what the situation is and what's at issue. With our budget cuts, we presented a complete program of reduction in tax rates. Again, our purpose was to provide incentive for the individual, incentives for business to encourage production and hiring of the unemployed, and to free up money for investment. Our bill calls for a 5% reduction in the income tax rates by October 1st, a 10% reduction beginning July 1st, 1982, and another 10% cut a year later, a 25% total reduction over 3 years.
The Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981 and the Tax Reform Act of 1986 were major changes introduced during President Ronald Reagan's time in office. These reforms aim to boost the economy by slashing taxes, marking a shift toward what's known as supply-side economics. The idea that cutting taxes at the top would encourage investment, create jobs, and eventually benefit everyone. Signed by Ronald Reagan during his first year in office, the Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981 was the largest tax cut in U.S. history. It dropped the top income tax rate for the wealthiest earners from 70% to 50%. Reagan's team believed that if people kept more of their money, they'd work harder, save more, and invest in the economy. This would, in theory, lead to economic growth that would eventually help everyone. And while the economy did grow, the tax cuts also caused federal revenues to drop sharply, leading to bigger deficits. Critics argued that the benefits mainly went to the rich, while the middle and working classes didn't see much improvement. While it cleaned up some unfair deductions, the lower top tax rates continued to benefit the wealthy the most. Many middle-class families felt they were left picking up more of the tax burden. These reforms kicked off a trend. Later, presidents like George W. Bush and Donald Trump followed Reagan's playbook. The Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2001 and the Jobs and Growth Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2003, collectively known as the Bush tax cuts, were central to President George W. Bush's economic agenda. These tax cuts aimed to stimulate the economy during a period of recession and uncertainty, following the burst of the dot-com bubble and the attacks of 9/11. While they were framed as tax relief for all Americans, their benefits were heavily skewed toward high-income earners and wealthy investors.
Will deliver substantial tax relief to 136 million American taxpayers by ensuring that Americans have more to spend, to save, and to invest. This legislation is adding fuel to an economic recovery.
The tax cuts provided a short-term stimulus, increasing disposable income and supporting consumer spending during a difficult economic period. However, they also significantly reduced federal revenue, contributing to ballooning deficits. The national debt grew substantially during the Bush years. Critics argued that the cuts prioritized short-term relief over long-term investments that could have addressed underlying economic challenges. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, championed by President Donald Trump, was one of the most sweeping tax reforms in decades.
Could you imagine Biden doing this? I don't think so.
Its primary goals were to stimulate economic growth, increase corporate competitiveness, and provide tax relief for individuals. While the law included provisions benefiting a wide range of taxpayers, its most significant impacts were felt by corporations and high-income earners, who received the largest proportional benefits. The corporate tax rate was slashed from 35% to 21%, a dramatic decrease intended to make U.S. businesses more competitive globally. It also saw a one-time tax break that encouraged corporations to bring profits held overseas back to the U.S. at reduced rates. The dramatic reduction in the corporate tax rate provided an immediate windfall for businesses, many of which used the savings for stock buybacks rather than job creation or wage increases. The 4 most liked posts on X last year all came from the site's billionaire owner Elon Musk, and all were about President-elect Donald Trump. Elon Musk has made at least 50 posts on X since January that contain false or misleading information about the U.S. presidential election. The posts have amassed 1.2 billion views. The role of media in shaping political outcomes has been undeniable throughout history. From print newspapers in the 19th century to the dominance of television in the 20th, media has long influenced public opinion and voter behavior. Take, for example, when television debates became defining moments in elections, starting with the famous 1960 Kennedy-Nixon debate, where Kennedy's on-screen charisma helped him gain an edge. In recent years, however, the dynamics of influence have gradually shifted as social media platforms have taken center stage, overshadowing traditional outlets in terms of reach and engagement. In 2008 elections, 74% of internet users went online to take part in or get news and information about the campaign, This represents 55% of the entire adult population. Barack Obama won the elections, becoming the first major candidate to use social media platforms to connect with supporters and donors. His innovative use of these tools has been compared to how Roosevelt utilized radio and Kennedy embraced television, earning him the nickname the first social media president.
This is so old. This was years ago. Come on.
In April 2022, shortly after Elon Musk announced his plan to buy Twitter, the tech billionaire promised that the platform would remain politically neutral under his leadership. By May 2023, Musk was transforming Twitter into a platform favoring Republican voices. He hosted Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' announcement for the GOP primary and lifted the ban on political advertising. Studies, public surveys, user data show that X has even worked directly with Trump's team for his 2024 campaign, effectively making X an unofficial mouthpiece for his campaign. Traditional media has long been influenced by a small group of powerful moguls, shaping narratives and public opinion through newspapers, television networks, and radio stations. However, the rise of social media has taken this dynamic to an entirely new level. Social media creates bubbles and echo chambers where users are primarily shown content that aligns with their existing beliefs. The ability of a single owner, like Elon Musk, to steer the direction of a platform with such vast influence highlights the potential dangers of concentrated power in this digital age.
Is that a joke? Oh. Thank you.
While rising inequality and concentrated power raise concerns, the resilience of U.S. democratic institutions offers hope. Free elections, an independent judiciary, and a free press serve as vital checks against oligarchic tendencies. The nation's future hinges on whether these institutions can adapt to address these challenges while empowering citizens to shape their democracy.